Hello and good evening. Welcome. Welcome back. And as per our previous practice, we have today PMP issue related to the process domain. Those who were not here yesterday, I will just tell them that we have following the exam content outline, which was updated in January 2021 as per the PMI guidelines, which has three domains: process, people, and business environment. We have already finished business environment and people. Today we are starting with process. And inside a domain, we have task what a project manager should know while doing the project. And to achieve those tasks, there are some enablers. Enablers like if we have a task, manage conflict. So to manage the conflict, you have to understand the conflict and then you have to analyze it and then use the appropriate strategy to be used in the particular situation. Based upon that, we have our process domain today. The first task, which says execute project with urgency required to deliver the business value. Whatever happens, we have to, as a project manager, whenever the project comes to you, so we know that we always select the project based upon the projects are always selected based upon the highest return of investment, highest net present value, highest internal rate of return, highest benefit to cost ratio, and least payback period. So, based upon this situation, we need to find out opportunities to deliver the value incrementally. Whether we are working in predictive approach, whether we are working in adaptive approach, we need to make sure that the things which requires or provides you the highest business value should be done first. Now, as a project manager, you should understand what things can bring the stakeholder engagement in a good position. Like if we cannot do the project of construction in adaptive life cycle, at least we can do in hybrid life cycle, which means at the planning level, we can use what adaptive life cycle, and at the construction level, we can use predictive life cycle. So when I say at planning level, you are using adaptive life cycle, it means you are trying to find out stakeholder reviews, feedback, so you can provide them the product what they need. Once they will look at it based upon the wireframe, prototype, based upon the initial designs, so we can remove the gulf between our understanding. That's what we call it, gulf of evaluation. What you think, what I think, it's totally different. So we need to come out from that perspective, and then we need to start delivering the product incrementally, which is always a better approach, but it depends on the project to project type. And we have to examine the business value throughout the project, which means we have a phase gate meeting. What is phase gate meeting? That after every phase, if you're working in predictive, you check your progress with the help of business case, with the help of benefits management plan, with the help of charter, along with the board. Before moving to the next phase, we check that are we going in the right direction or not. That's why we also call it toll point or toll gate. We check that everything is fine. We are getting the delivery as required. If not, we need to change our strategy, or maybe we need to terminate the project now as it doesn't require more investment. So phase gate meeting will always help you to understand and realize the business value. And in terms of agile, we have those things always in the product backlog with the help of product owner. But in the predictive, and you as a project manager will be working with the stakeholders to analyze those things so you can make the better decisions for the project. Support the team to subdivide project tasks as necessary to find a minimum viable product. So we have to promote the culture, we have to empower the culture, we have to make the team self-organized. As a project manager, we have to provide the psychological safe environment so the team can work independently or autonomously, and they can produce better results, they can provide innovative results and find better alternatives to do the work. But it will only happen when you will use appropriate leadership style. Whether you are in predictive, whether you are in adaptive, you have to use a self-organizing team. You have to use diversified team so you can make your project output better. So to complete this task, which is execute project with the urgency, we need to find out that how we are delivering incrementally, what is the business value after every phase, how can we make it better, and to make our performances better. For sure, my performances is based upon my team. So if team will perform well, it means our project will go in the correct direction. So we have to empower the team. Let's go to the task two, which is manage communication. And as we discussed in all the chapters, that as a project manager, your main task is what? To coordinate, to provide communications. So you need to understand, analyze communication needs of all stakeholders based upon the stakeholder register. So you can prepare a document called as communication management plan. Who needs what information, how, when, with which format, which frequency, what type of detail they needed. So you can provide them accurate information and then communicate project information and updates effectively, which means you have to send a progress report, status report, forecasting reports, trend analysis report, or nowadays we have what? Information radiators, which we use in Agile, or it can be used nowadays as a dashboard in predictive project management also, that you can provide them the access. So instead of sending the reports manually to them, you create the reports and send it to them. You can give the access on the repository or information radiators. So the data can be sent to our stakeholders accordingly. And based upon the communication model that there is a sender, there is a receiver. Sender will send while encoding. Receiver will receive and decode the message. Receiver will send the acknowledgement that I have received the communication. And if there are barriers in communication like noise, so in that case, sender is responsible to collect the feedback. That if you think there is a barrier of communication like noise, language, culture, distance, so you have to confirm that whatever I said to you, was it well received or not? And when I say that the type of details you need, which means you need to understand that you are sending formal communication or informal communication. And formal communication we discussed is we use for communications with external stakeholders or there is a complex problem. While informal, we can use between our team and other project managers, the peer project managers. So we can adjust the language or the context accordingly for the communications. The only difference between communication and predictive is what? We use high-tech tools and they provide low touch to the stakeholders. Not everyone can understand it, but information radiators are what? They are low tech, but high touch, everyone can understand. So we need to work with information radiators, which concludes burn down chart, that how much work is remaining, burn up chart, how much work is completed, product backlog, how much is reflecting, iteration backlog. We can have the Kanban boards to visualize the work, to find out the bottlenecks. All these will be considered as information radiators. So manage communication, and word manage itself is the word of execution, executing domain or executing process group, that during the execution of the project, you have to manage communications, choose the appropriate model, and whenever we send the communication, collect the feedback. Collect the feedback, which means minutes of meeting should be distributed and get validated from all the stakeholders or the relevant stakeholders, so they cannot create any problems for you. When you are signing off, you should get appropriate sign off and so on. Task three, assess and manage risk, which means that our risk management plan will keep live all the time. Risk management plan contains what the methods you will use to analyze the risk. They will understand the probability and impact, which is low, medium, and high for the stakeholders. You will understand the stakeholder appetite, that they are averse, neutral, or seekers. You will define the roles and responsibilities, that who will be the risk owner and who will be the risk action owner. Risk owner, we said, that is the person who is responsible to identify and assess the risk and provide the trigger conditions and provide the potential responses for the risk. Also the categorization from where the risk can arise. Also the frequency of the review meeting, how we will do it. What will be the criteria of emergent risk or the new risk, and how they will be covered. They will be covered by contingency reserve or management reserve. So all the time from the project management, you as a project manager, whether in predictive, whether in agile, keep assessing the risk throughout the project. So iteratively assess and prioritize risk, So this is what risk management plan. And the second one is reflecting to our backlog that the user story which have highest value and highest risk will be done first. So throughout the project, we can reduce the uncertainty and risk as early as possible in the project and can deliver the highest value. So you have to keep assessing and managing the risk. Task four is engage a stakeholder. Engage a stakeholder based upon we have a matrix called as stakeholder engagement assessment matrix, where we have the classifications of unaware, resistant, supportive, leading, and neutral. So we need to understand which type of stakeholders they are, what are their concerns, by maybe by using power interest grid or power interest influence cube, we can use and categorize the stakeholder based upon the salience model, which we discussed yesterday also, that power, urgency, and legitimacy, which type of stakeholders will require which type of communications, how they can be engaged. Like if someone has a compliance, so their priority will be high. If someone is related to sponsor, their priority will be high. If someone is related to functional manager of the end user, then their priorities will also be high. And you need to balance between them. You have to be a good negotiator and facilitator. So you have to engage a stakeholder by category of these ones. So you can check their current engagement and you can bring them into desired engagements. And for all our desired engagements are supportive. In some cases, for our organization, executive management, it can be leading. So you have to keep assessing, keep updating. So that is what monitor and control, that keep assessing your stakeholder engagement strategy. If it's not working, choose another one, choose another one, choose another one. And based upon the requirements, use your influence or influential skills to get the consensus among the stakeholders so you can proceed the project in a smooth way. Task 5 says that plan and manage budget and resources, which means if you remember that PMI always have first thing in common is called as you have to plan everything. So we have 10 knowledge areas. So we have 10 management plans. So we have management plan for scope, requirements, schedule, cost, quality, risk, resource, procurement, communication, stakeholders. So once we have all the management plans, and the purpose of management plan is what we discuss, it defines how. It defines the strategy that how we will do a particular work. So you can use estimate budgetary needs based upon the scope of work of the project and lesson learned from the past project, which means I can use analogous estimation if I have the information, or I can do the rough order magnitude, which is minus 25 to plus 75%. Correct. Anticipate future budget challenges, which means we can add contingency reserve in our activities or above work packages. We said in activities it is optional, but above work packages it's mandatory. Contingency reserves are added in the cost for known risk, known impact, or known risk, unknown impact. And then we have to keep doing what monitor budget variations, which means earned value analysis, where we can check cost variance, schedule variance, cost performance index, and schedule performance index. And based upon that, we can forecast based upon ETC, how much work is remaining, EAC, how much money is required, or variance at completion, that what is the extra amount needed than the required amount, or I can use TCPI, where the work is divided by the cost to find out how much budget we need to complete the project. So based upon the earned value analysis, what we will be doing, we'll be performing the funding limit reconciliation, where we will keep checking how much money is left in terms of amount and in terms of contingencies, so we can get the required amount on the time or before the time, so we can manage the project resources as per our plan. So we remember that in ETC and EAC, we had two situations, initial and current. If you have temporary delays and then you will go back to your plan rate, or if your performance remains current, then there was a separate equation for that purpose also. For that, we already shared the video. So that's how you will plan and budget the resources, and resources means the same man, material, and machines. Similar to that, plan and manage schedule, which means I have to prepare the schedule management plan, where I have to find out that what are the working hours, what is the duration of the project, what will be the reporting time of the project, which approach we will use. We will go with critical path or critical chain. Critical path is what? The longest path to finish the project and shortest duration. While critical chain is what? The buffers between the activities and resources to make our life better. Or if the things are not clear, we can go with agile or we can go with hybrid approach. So you have to prepare the schedule management plan and then you have to define the criteria accordingly. And while defining, you need to understand leads and lags. What is lead? Starting the or advancing the successor activity towards predecessor or earlier than its planned time, or lag is called as mandatory waiting time. Similar to that, we have something called as float. Float means the amount of time you can delay an activity without delaying the project end date. And free float is the amount of time you can delay an activity without delaying the start of next activity. And we have something called as procrastination or Parkinson law, which means that you should not provide a more amount of time for less amount of duration. Otherwise, your team will be demotivated. So you have to provide less amount of time for more amount of work. So ultimately, your team will feel motivated and connected, and maybe they can achieve the objectives earlier than the planned time. And similarly, there is something called as the point where we can increase the output, but instead of increasing, it will start going down. So based upon those criteria, we will check that how much resources we can add and how much resources we can balance. So we estimate the project, we estimate the milestones which are coming from the charter, which contains the high level milestones. We can define activities with the help of WBS, or we can define activities with the help of product backlog. And inside product backlog, we have what? User stories. And user stories are decomposed into tasks. And tasks are calculated, or user stories are calculated in the form of story points, not durations. The story point are what? Effort plus complexity required to complete a particular user story. So for that, you can use analogous or parametric estimation, analogous from past, parametric by maths, and detail bottom up, which means WPS. Or if we have uncertainties, we can go with 3-point estimation where we have O plus M plus P divided by 3 for the simple average, or O plus 4M plus P divided by 6 with the per duration or weighted average. You can use critical path or critical chain. You can keep changing the methodology. You can go with the hybrid also. You can modify the schedule, which means you will be performing earned value analysis. And then you might need to perform crashing or fast tracking. In crashing, we add resources, the cost will increase and risk will increase. In fast tracking, we do the activities in parallel, which means the risk will be increasing more than the cost. And ultimately, you have to do the resource optimization, which is what we have leveling, where if the resources are over allocated, we have to balance them. So the baseline will change, or we have to perform a smoothing, which means we will utilize our floats and shift the resources from one point to another point. So we can release the constraints or stress on the critical paths. So that's how the schedule will be done throughout the project. And ultimately, we will balance the project throughout our schedules. We'll keep changing, we'll keep doing the earned value analysis. We'll keep checking the dependencies, the mandatory dependencies, discretionary dependencies, which can be changed, internal or external dependencies, or we can have also the finish to start relationship, start to start relationship, finish to finish, and start to finish, which is rarely used relationships. So based upon those, we'll prepare and manage the project schedules accordingly. We have to plan and manage the quality of the product deliverable, which means we have to prepare the quality management plan where we have to identify which standards, which global standards, which local standards, like if you're working in Saudi Arabia, then there are Saudi Arabia standards. If you're working in Europe market, then European standards you have to follow. So you have to determine the quality standards for the project. And if there is a better option, you have to propose it. It's customer choice whether to accept it or not, or responses, but you have to provide your responses accordingly. So recommend options for improvement and based upon the quality gaps, and quality gaps are always done with the help of quality audits, where we review what is happening. So ultimately, we can improve our performances. Continuously survey project deliverable quality, which means we will always have quality control measurement from the quality control team. They will verify the deliverable based upon the criteria and based upon the tolerance, that how much tolerance is expected. To verify the deliverable, we'll perform inspection, and for audit, we'll perform assurance. And assurance is done on process, while inspection is done on product. So you have to plan quality, you have to manage quality, you have to control quality throughout the project. And we can use 7 tools of quality. One of them was flowchart, which was sequence of operations. One of them is called as root cause analysis, or we call it fishbone diagram. We call it the Ishikawa diagram, or we can use 5 point technique. Once you will get the data, you can create a histogram upon that data. And on the histogram, you can perform 80-20 analysis or Pareto analysis to find out that which are having the major problems in the project. And if you have more than one relation, so you can use a scatter diagram to find out the correlation, correlation between them. And if there is a process instability, you can check it with the help of control charts also. And to find out the quality errors, you can use check sheets, which contains the daily basis data that why it is being done. And to improve, we have a theory called as PDCA, the Kaizen, continuously improve, plan, do, check, act, which is developed by Mr. William Edward David. So that was the part of quality management plan. Once you are going with the plan now, you will be able to prepare the scope. And to prepare the scope, we need to understand the requirements. What type of requirements? We will collect the business requirement. We will collect the stakeholder requirements. We will collect the quality requirements, functional requirements, non-functional requirements, product requirement, project requirement, transition requirements. All these requirements will be collected and going to the product backlog, or they are going to the requirement traceability matrix, and they will be prioritized based upon their dependencies. If I say in terms of agile, so it will be going into the product backlog, otherwise it will be going to the WBS, where you will have the work packages and you can arrange them. And we had 2 types of work packages. One is called as work package and one is called as planning package. And planning package was what? Insufficient details are available, but we need to keep it here so we may not miss them. And we keep those things based upon the progressive elaboration. As the time will go by, you will find more details accordingly. And you have to monitor and validate the scope with the help of what? Acceptance criteria, which was defined in requirement traceability matrix, or which was defined in user story as acceptance criteria or definition of done. So you deliver only what is required, not more or not less. If it is less, it will be breach. If it is more, it will be gold plating or scoping. And as a project manager, you are accountable to meet the project scope. Because if there is something like this, you will be in very grave trouble. So you have to plan the scope, you have to manage the scope. In predictive, we prepare the scope baseline, and a scope baseline is the component which contains 3 things. It contains project scope statement, which is very detailed. It contains WBS, which contains work packages. It contains WBS dictionary, which contains all the activities, their details, their dependencies, their risks, their estimations. So these 3 components make the scope baseline in predictive, or product owner prepare the backlog in adaptive or agile. Once the scope is ready, quality is ready, schedule is ready, cost is ready, so you will integrate all those planning activities, which means all those plans which you have made, they will be actually integrating to the project management plan. And as a project manager, it's your 100% responsibility. This is your primary task as a project manager, to integrate the process, policies, complexities, and stakeholders accordingly. So consolidate the phases as the project management plan, find out their dependencies and gap, analyze the data collected. We have 3 things: with performance data, it will be converted into work performance information, which is analyzed data, and then it will be converted into work performance reports. which will be sent to the stakeholders for the performance analysis. And based upon that, if there are changes required, you will submit to the change control board so they can make decisions based upon those reports. And then determine critical information requirement. If you are preparing the project management plan, the information which is missing from the project management plan, you have to find out and provide those things from your oversight, from your experiences. Then this project management plan will be going to the sponsor for and relevant stakeholders for the approval. Once approved, it will go to the execution team. So there were 16 tasks. Let's keep it here. It's task number 9. For the remaining task, we will do tomorrow because it's related to the change management also. And then tomorrow, if I will have time, so I will again explain the cycle of the full cycle of the predictive as well as adaptive life cycle. So I hope today also some value is added, some spark might have come out. So you can start preparing well for your project and solve the questions accordingly. So let's keep it here. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.